They never told you the truth about time. They told you that your 20s were everything, that your youth was the golden season, that the chaos, the rush, the noise, that was life at its peak. And if you didn't figure it all out by then, your identity, your path, your person, you were somehow behind. And so you rushed, you reached, you performed, you built versions of yourself you could barely recognize, all while convincing the world, and maybe even yourself, that you were fine. But there's a moment no one warned you about, a moment that comes like a quiet tide in your late 30s, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. It's not loud, it doesn't knock, it just appears, like fog seeping under a door. And suddenly you wake up, and everything that once mattered starts to feel strangely empty. The things you chased begin to feel borrowed. The person you became feels like a performance you can't sustain. The mirror doesn't reflect age. It reflects a kind of spiritual fatigue, a kind of quiet ache. You start asking questions you never dared to ask. Who am I? Really? What have I built? Why do I feel like something is missing? And most terrifying of all, if I stopped pretending, what would be left? You see, this is not a crisis. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Because for the first time in your life, you're not chasing someone else's version of success. You're not trying to impress your parents or your peers or the image you created for social approval. For the first time, you're looking inward, not outward. This is the age of reckoning. This is where the soul begins to speak. And when it does, it doesn't ask for status. It doesn't ask for validation. It asks for truth. Not in the way you used it before, not as a tool or a weapon or a costume, but truth as a home, a place where your heart can finally breathe without shrinking, a space where your shadows aren't punished, they're understood. You start to realize that the first 40 years of your life were spent trying to become someone. But now, the task is different. Now you're being called to unbecome, to unravel, to peel away the masks, to strip the layers, to return to something deeper than identity. You start to feel the divide between the life you're living and the life that wants to live through you. And that gap, it hurts. It burns. It nags at you at 3 a.m. and whispers during your morning coffee. It shows up in your relationships, in your work, in your quiet moments of reflection. It shows up when the applause fades, when the promotions don't satisfy, when the love you chased doesn't heal the wounds you buried. You realize you've been surviving, not living. And here in this sacred discomfort, something ancient awakens. Not a version of you, not a brand, not a title, but a presence. A presence that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. A presence that holds your joy and your grief without judgment. A presence that speaks softly but carries the weight of 1,000 truths. Carl Jung once said that the first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego, but the second half is about transcending it. And that's what begins at 40. Not a decline, not a decay, but a descent into depth. A journey from surface to soul. And it doesn't look like what the world celebrates. It looks like slowing down when everyone else is speeding up. It looks like listening when everyone else is speaking. It looks like solitude when everyone demands connection. It looks like feeling. For the first time in decades, you start to feel again. And not just emotions, but meaning, patterns, echoes from childhood, shadows that never left, just got better at hiding. You start to see that much of what you called you was actually protection, persona, adaptation. And when you begin to let those fall away, what remains? Stillness, honesty, clarity. You're not who you were, and you never truly were. But now you get to become. And that becoming doesn't rush, it doesn't shout, it doesn't demand an audience. It waits for you, patiently, lovingly, quietly. It's the version of you that's been waiting for decades to finally be chosen. Not for performance, not for perfection,
but for presence. This is what begins after 40, and it's the most sacred thing you'll ever know.
They told you the second half of life would be slower, quieter, that you'd settle down, that things would make sense. But they didn't prepare you for the unraveling. They didn't tell you that the life you carefully built would begin to feel like someone else's clothes, too tight, too clean, too predictable. They didn't tell you that comfort could become a prison and that everything you once dreamed of could become a cage if it wasn't born of truth. There's a silent betrayal that happens when the soul awakens. Not betrayal by the world, but by the self you thought you were supposed to be. You feel it when you laugh at the jokes you don't find funny anymore. You feel it when you walk into a room and your body stiffens for no reason. You feel it when you say, "I'm fine," and your chest aches as the words leave your mouth. Something in you is no longer willing to participate in the game. You can't explain it, not fully, but something is shifting. Something is calling you out of the performance, and it's terrifying. Because for so long, you've believed that your worth was tied to who you could convince the world you were. You built a life on roles, titles, responsibilities, the parent, the partner, the provider, the friend. But now, your spirit is asking for something else. Not more, not less, just real. You begin to notice what drains you, what no longer fits. Who makes your nervous system clench when they walk into the room? You start seeing through people, not with judgment, but with clarity. You see how much pretending surrounds you, how often connection is performance, not presence. You notice how much of your life has been built on should instead of want. And it hurts, because you realize how long you've abandoned yourself just to be loved, how long you've kept quiet just to be accepted, how long you've performed just to be safe. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of ourselves we exile, repress, deny. But what no one tells you is that the shadow isn't just anger or shame or fear. Sometimes the shadow is your joy, your voice, your boldness, your intuition. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you buried was your brilliance. Because the world taught you to dim it, to hide the parts that made you too sensitive, too emotional, too wild. They called it too much. So you buried your fire beneath politeness. You buried your desire beneath duty. You buried your questions beneath certainty. And now it's all resurfacing. You catch yourself longing for something more, not success, not validation, not fame, but freedom. The freedom to wake up and not dread your life, the freedom to be fully expressed, the freedom to be seen without explanation. And this is where the real journey begins. Not forward, not upward, but inward. You begin to ask, what did I silence just to survive? What do I believe that was never mine to believe? Who am I without the costumes? And the answers don't come quickly. They rarely come with words. They come in silence, in tears you can't explain, in memories that rise like ghosts,
in dreams that wake you up at 2:17 a.m., you start to feel things differently. Music moves you deeper. Nature speaks louder. The noise of the world becomes unbearable. And people start to notice. They say you've changed, that you're more distant, that you don't smile as much. But it's not distance, it's discernment. You're not disengaging, you're detoxing. Detoxing from people who don't know how to listen, detoxing from environments that punish your truth, detoxing from identities that were never real. This is the fire before the rebirth, the death before the awakening. And it's holy, because on the other side of this burning is you. Not the version shaped by fear, not the version curated for applause, but the one who remembers, the one who sees, the one who is. No more pretending, no more shrinking, no more apologizing for what your soul knows. You're not here to fit in. You're here to remember. And when you do, life doesn't get easier, but it gets real. And that realness, that raw, unfiltered, sacred truth is worth every tear, every silence, every goodbye. Because it's not the world you need to impress. It's your soul you need to come home to. And it's been waiting. Since the beginning.
And still, there's something more. Something you haven't said aloud. Maybe because you don't have the words yet. Maybe because it feels too big, too strange, too invisible to explain. But it's there. A sense, a weight, a whisper that keeps returning in quiet moments, when the noise fades and you're left with only the hum of your own soul. It says, you've been walking through life with a part of you still waiting. Waiting to be claimed, waiting to be seen, not by others, but by you. The part you buried because it felt too sensitive, too wild, too spiritual, too confusing. The part that never fit the image, that asked too many questions, that felt things too deeply. The part that cried when no one else did. You didn't lose it. You abandoned it. Out of necessity, to survive. But now you're strong enough to turn around and go back for it. To return to the place inside where your own voice got quiet, where your own needs became too loud to hold. And now they echo loudly, demanding to be felt, to be honored. Because there's no freedom in pretending you don't feel what you feel. Carl Jung once said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. And this truth, this wild, aching truth, isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to liberate you. Because you don't heal by denying what hurts. You heal by facing it, holding it, letting it speak. So what if this isn't a crisis? What if this is your soul returning? What if the chaos, the confusion, the pull to disconnect isn't dysfunction, but a signal that something sacred is waking up inside you? Something ancient, something honest, something divine. You were never meant to walk this life numb. You were never meant to call exhaustion normal or self-betrayal maturity. You were meant to remember, to break, to weep, to reassemble with new eyes. You were meant to question everything you inherited that never felt like truth. You were meant to stop and breathe and listen. Because beneath the noise, you already know the way back. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming who you had to be. And as you do, the people who never truly saw you will fall away.
That is not loss. That is alignment. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are becoming. In the quiet space where your soul returns to the surface, listen. There is wisdom waiting. There is God waiting. Not as punishment, as promise. You have not failed. You are just finally meeting yourself. So stop hiding in strength. Stop performing peace. Stop negotiating your truth. What you seek is not out there. It has always been within. The life you want is waiting on the other side of your honesty. You have carried the world long enough. Now carry yourself. And if this message reached you, if these words found their way into your hidden places, then this is not coincidence. This is the call back home. And if it stirred something in you, if it made you breathe deeper or blink a little longer or hold your chest without knowing why, then stay with us. This space is for you, for your pain, for your truth, for your remembering. Subscribe now, not just to this channel, but to the part of you that's ready to return. Because we are not done yet, not even close. This is just the beginning.